Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding, back in with another episode of Progress Report. This is the series where I take one or a few past versions of an athlete and compare them to their latest version to see just exactly where they're progressing, where they've stalled, and maybe even where they've regressed. In today's video, we have a controversial one. This past weekend, Hunter Labrada did his first show of the 2024 season, the Pro Muscle Italy, which he won, by the way, easily. No one was quite in his league. But I'm seeing a lot of opinions out there about how Hunter didn't improve, and how he's even worse now, what have you. I think a lot of the fans were disappointed, especially because Hunter was looking insane in his lead-up pics on Instagram, and he said he was bringing his best version yet. Did Hunter actually succeed in that endeavor? Did the lighting and live stream do him a disservice, or did he actually regress? Let's just get down to it. Let's try to answer the question, did Hunter Labrada bring his best? But I also want to cover the overall broad question about Hunter's transformation. How has he gotten better or worse over his career? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at three versions. We'll actually start with his second pro win ever at the 2021 Chicago Pro. Then we're going to use his best version to date, at least up until this weekend, the 2023 Tampa Pro, which he also won. And then of course we'll compare those two versions to this past weekend's Pro Muscle Italy version. With these three physiques, we can see not only how Hunter has progressed in the long term, but see if he actually did beat his previous best version. With all that out of the way, let's jump into today's video. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. In the front double, I'm actually going to make the less obvious choice right off the bat. I have 2021 Hunter taking this one. Now, are the other versions better? Yes, they're better condition-wise, they're bigger, he brought better body parts, but the flow was such an important aspect of this pose. And 2021 Hunter had the best flow because he was the smallest. Being smaller is actually a good thing for a pose like this up until a point. Now, would I give him this pose if all of these versions were lined up on a real stage? I honestly doubt it. Things do change in an actual lineup, but when you compare anyone to themselves, you really start to nitpick things, and other things get rewarded. So in terms of what I like more, I actually have to go with this first version. But then fast forward to 2023, and oh boy, look at the improvements. He got a little more washed down the abs, but I think some of that has to do with how he's changing the posing and elongating his torso. But it's a good trade-off. This version is technically the best up here. Not my favorite, but no doubt the best. Look at the legs and that insane jump and refinement from 2021. And then of course, everything up top got a little bigger and a little more refined too. But then when we go to 2024, it looks like he's regressed, to be honest. And this has a ton to do with the photo quality. We'll look at the video footage more at the end, but you'll still see how conditioned he was. I do think it was his most conditioned package ever, and we'll clearly see that in the video. But in terms of the peak, I do think he could have been a little bit fuller. And if he had that fullness, he would have been just a little bit fuller, obviously, but also those cuts and that separation would have been more prominent. So the pics are making him look less separated to begin with, but legitimately, I do think he could have peaked a little bit better. 2023 is not just a little more separated, but slightly bigger overall. So subpar camera quality or not, I do think the 2024 version was slightly worse than 2023. Now, he did make solid improvements in terms of size, but in a pose like the front double, we're just not going to notice those as much. So let's move on. Now we're here in the side chest, skipping over the front lat because it's just not necessary to look at every pose. But I did want to look at this particular one because this has been one of Hunter's weakest shots. He's pretty solid in most areas, but the pecs are really flat, and that obviously hurts him a lot in the side chest pose. Now this is the pose where I actually figured out that this had to have been a peaking issue for the 2024 version. He's the smallest in this version for sure, but harder than the 2021 version. But first, let's just take a look at 23 to 24. He's definitely fuller in 23, and with that fullness, those details pop more, but the giveaway for me was the midsection. He has more detail in his obliques now in his most recent version. Like I said, I really think he was the most conditioned here and at his driest, as evident in this pic. There are details there that we haven't quite seen yet, but the peak wasn't 100% and the camera quality and the lighting handicapped him severely. So 2023 definitely wins here, with 2021 not too far behind. He wasn't as hard and dry, but that extra fullness allows that version to prevail over the most recent one in my mind. Now, I know a lot of you by this point are probably thinking there's just actually no way Hunter improved. Well, I do believe the peak was off as well as the lighting and the photo quality, but let's say I'm wrong. Even if I'm wrong about the peaking issue and the lighting and all of that, I don't really think that we can deny that in terms of size and added tissue onto his physique, Hunter was objectively the best in 2024. This is something he's always been able to do. He's always been able to improve even his weakest points. And the rear double was a weak shot for him. 2021 shows a great starting point. It's not a great pose, but then when you fast forward, you can just see how much he's added. 2021 showcases really only some detail in the upper back and literally nothing else. He also could have been a lot harder and drier overall. Then in 2023, there was a noticeable improvement. The upper back just got even better, and he really improved his conditioning. The delts are so much more separated along with the upper back. And the lats also gained some thickness, especially in that lower region, and they actually just show up in this pose where they didn't the last time. With his conditioning, his lower body is even better, because although it's the same size-wise roughly, he got even sharper. But in 2024, he proves how much of a bodybuilder's bodybuilder he he is. He knew what he needed to work on, he knew what he needed to do, and did it, and he got the results. Now the posing is different. He's leaning back a lot more, and that makes the lower lats appear thicker. But honestly, recognizing you need to do that and doing it to look better is an improvement. But legitimately, there is no way the back as a whole didn't improve if you really look at it, despite the more favorable posing. The upper back in 24 literally ate 23s. He's doubled his thickness. He's also gotten a bit wider, and he's improved that mid back and those lats too, evident by the more jagged detail along the spine. The lower body's basically the same as in 23, but with just a filter over it. If you look really closely, he basically did retain all the details from the prior year. But of course, the lighting does him dirty. And that's another thing. The back is hurt by the lighting big time, especially because he's leaning back a lot now, casting a big shadow. So to look this improved with this lighting is crazy. Imagine if 2023 and 2024 had the same lighting. It would be a night and day difference. This just shows that Hunter was undoubtedly improved in some areas, despite what the naysayers are naysaying. We're going to take a look at the rear lat spread too, but I gotta be honest, this was included as more of a proof of concept. First off, yet again, there was a massive jump in muscularity and conditioning from 21 to 23, and notably a posing tweak as well. But fast forward to this year, and now he's hitting the pose differently, so it's hard to tell what exactly was improved. Not to mention, look at the shadows and this dark ass lighting. This is just embarrassing. Not for Hunter, but for these show promoters, if you want to call them that. Now legitimately, I do think Hunter's lats and mid-back region did get thicker from 2023. He will not look as wide though because he just isn't hitting the pose the same anymore. You'll see this more in that video I talked about towards the end. He's changed his pose up because he's wide enough now that he can pose to prioritize showcasing thickness. And legitimately, I do prefer this to the other versions. Maybe he is wider in 2023, but he looks flimsy compared to what you see now and will see from the 2024 version. We're going to skip past the side try now. It's one of Hunter's best poses, so who really cares if it's improved? And even if it got worse, which it didn't, I can tell you that, he would still be one of, if not the best in the world right now. Instead, we're going to Hunter's abs and thighs, and this shot will be interesting because the midsection is the biggest criticism. I'll just rip this band-aid off, there's really no beating around this bush here. His midsection has gotten worse. Let's not even focus on the quads for right now, just look at 2021's midsection. His entire ab wall is flat and locked in, and the abs are defined. All of them, even the lower ones. Now go to 2023. The quads for sure got a lot freakier, but the stomach did too. The lower abs are now washed out and his lower stomach is protruding. Then in 2024, it really didn't get any better. It's hard to say if it exactly got worse because of the lighting, but even if he didn't, he desperately needs to fix this. But even if he didn't, this is something he still needs to fix. If there is one thing holding him back, it's this. I don't really think that he's getting docked on his body parts anymore, and he definitely won't going forward. They're all very good. I don't even think the pec tear is a massive deal now that everyone knows what it is. And then just take a gander at the quads. Again, as shredded as they are, he's just not as separated as in 2023. To me, the order these versions appear on screen is my clear order for this one, and 2021 wins by a mile. We're going to take a look at one more pose today, and it's actually one of Hunter's best, but is it regressing? Of course I'm talking about the most muscular. Has he gotten bigger over the years? For sure. Even in 2024, which doesn't look as big as 2023 because of the peak and the lighting, he was definitely thicker in the pecs, shoulders, and arms. But the problem is the midsection. Now, it wasn't even the best in 2021. It was still very solid, but you know, it just wasn't one of the best of all time. What surprised me though is how similar he ended up looking in 2023 to 2021. A bit more rounded overall, but very similar, which I wouldn't have guessed based on what they say about this shot. But in 2024, I would definitely say he deteriorated here. I don't even think the lighting and photo excuses hold much water here. In this shot, the lower stomach is even more rounded and the abs even more washed out. He's bigger everywhere in 2024. The legs aren't as good as the 2023 versions, but again, that probably has to do a lot with the lighting and the peak. But overall, I just like 2023 more, mainly because of the midsection. And again, that has really little to do with the lighting. Honestly, because of the midsection, I actually prefer the first version even to the one we just saw this past weekend. So my ranking for the final pose would be 2023 in first, 2021 in second, and 2024 in a narrow third. Alright, so it's time for the verdict, and we have two questions to answer. Is Hunter improving, and did he bring his best version this year? Now, I know that we've looked at photos of these versions, but really focus on the video I have up on the screen right now. Time and time again, I said the pics weren't doing Hunter any justice, and I can back that up. I thought Hunter was pretty bad this year too, until I saw the videos, and afterwards, it did change what I thought about this version and how it relates to the others. So with the video footage, and even based on some of the pics, I think it's easy to answer that first question. I do think Hunter is improving, and his 2024 version was his most improved. But there is some nuance here. Is his 2024 flow as good as 2021? No, and it wasn't as good as his 2023 version either. But 2023 also wasn't as good as 2021's. 2021 clearly had the most appealing shape, but this is modern open bodybuilding. And that physique was only going to take Hunter so far. So even though he did have to sacrifice some of his shape, he has not only improved conditioning from 2021 big time, even from 23 to 24 if you look at this video, but the size gains are obvious. Again, 2024 even beats 2023 in terms of size. We saw this in the back especially, and in this video it's pretty clear. Overall, I do think that's what modern bodybuilding kind of demands. He had to improve size-wise, as he was pretty incomplete back in 2021. But it did come at the cost of his midsection. With that, I do think this is still an overall net gain that is hindered by the fact that his abs are not what they used to be. But these two most recent versions are obviously going to do more damage in the competitive circuit than 2021 ever could and ever did. So really the proof is in the pudding. But what about the second question? Was this his best version ever? Well, this is actually pretty hard to answer. Even with the video, it's not the best video. It reveals a lot more than the pics did and shows how good Hunter really was at the 2024 Pro Muscle Italy, but at the end of the day, it is just an iPhone video taken from within the audience. So I can't really give you a definitive answer, and I'm usually one that defends picture comparisons and whatnot. But this one is really close, and I think that's a good point for Hunter. I remember when Hunter stepped out on stage and won Tampa, he had a ton of hype around him, and rightfully so. That package was his best and it was insane. He finally peaked what seemed to be like his 100%, and he brought his best back, his best legs, and a ton of the other improvements. But now we've already established that in terms of his biggest and best package, that was in 2024. So he's already improved that over 2023. But there are a couple of other things that prevent me from outright saying this was his best. For one, I do think his midsection was just a little bit rounder and more washed out than normal. And just based on what I'm seeing in this video, I would say I was at least somewhat right about the peaking issue. And it makes sense. Peaking has always been an issue for Hunter. He's a guy that has a narrower path to a solid peak. And I don't think he was 100% walking that tightrope this time around. Again, this is just based on what I'm seeing though. But even with the peak in the stomach, he was still close to his previous best version based on this video. He was his biggest, and I do believe he was in his best condition yet. He just didn't fill out properly enough, peak well enough, what have you. But if you look at the dryness, the graininess, and so on in 2024's video, you can see that he has all those things on his prior versions, including 2023. So all in all, I'm not going to say definitely this was his best version. In some ways, it definitely was. But as a whole, there were some things left on the table. The moral of the story is that he was close peak-wise while bringing improved body parts and conditioning. So overall, regardless if this was his best version or not, I would still say this is a big win for Hunter. He'll have more chances to peak, and he can always peak better. But what's important is that he's improving the other things with tremendous strides. I definitely don't think this was a regression of Hunter, and it was far from his worst physique. While some things have gotten slightly worse on his physique, he definitely has improved on several aspects. And that 2024 version was much closer to his best version than people realize. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Overall, what do you think about those two questions surrounding Hunter's progress? Has he improved, and was the 2024 Pro Muscle Italy his best version to date? Let me know your answers down in the comments. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos just like this one. By the way, if you guys want to support the channel and need some high quality supplements, then be sure to head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, use my code Project10 for 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.